YouTube user Kane Reeve left a really long comment on one of my videos.
Oh, look, the probably Christian defending, indirectly, the other Christian. Has it ever occurred to you not everyone is Sile, and even he takes care and deletes streams, and Jeff doesn't need to be legally entangled in BS, which he is experiencing anyway. The extra difference is he has a website which you are reading from, most other streamers don't, and a family, which some don't. That said, Jeff always had a weird format I didn't really like and still don't.
So I purposely don't announce my adherence to the Christian faith everywhere I go. The Bible says Christ's name is written on our hearts, which incidentally means whatever Christian stuff is a part of me will ideally be brought forth in a way that precludes me having to label myself wherever I go. More Christians ought to do that in my estimation. And I'm not familiar with Dread Roberts, if that is the other Christian you're referring to here. For all I know, Dread Roberts is a Mormon, or maybe he's one of these New Age Christians. I don't know if his beliefs are orthodox or unorthodox. I don't know if his faith is about good vibes or actual truth. In my video, I was primarily focused on the hypocrisy of Smash JT, and that does not necessarily mean I was defending anyone. In fact, I addressed that in another video where my main take was that these so-called Christians who were making a stink on X were just playing into an AstroTurf. From everything I can tell, centrists like Jeff and Dev want to stoke a narrative that paints Christians as having this unique tendency to moralize. Meanwhile, Jeff and Dev paint themselves as enlightened centrists. And of course, this means they are the most rational parties present, because they sit on the fence. They don't take sides. But notice it's always Christians who are attacked, particularly for promoting their beliefs. Meanwhile, you have someone like Neil Druckmann who pushes narratives in video games that promote a religious conflict overseas. And you would never see the same level of pushback like you do the Christian faith. So ask yourself, why is it that when it's any other religious group or cult or whatever injecting their values into media, it all flies under the radar? But when Christians say anything, everyone sounds the alarm. Why is it that it took a Sweet Baby Inc. employee to rage against a Steam curator group that suddenly all these centrists shifted from accepting wokeness to turning on it? Meanwhile, we have a few nobodies on X who voice their personal preferences about video games. And then boom, we have a narrative about Christians subverting the industry with their morals. I don't know, man. This all seems very guided to me.
Also, it's not that the woke person wants and enjoys putting themselves in the game. Jeff's problem is with woke persons pressuring other people to put the woke person into established IPs. He's not trying to dictate zero woke, he's trying to make it so woke doesn't force itself in everything with reputational blackmail, as you know it does, likely with non-legally actionable speech cause of his circumstances and YouTube censorship. If the woke he puts himself into life is strange, I don't think Jeff said or would say anything. He probably commented, or should, about how those fools woked too hard and closed down the studio when it was okay and good for the woke enjoyers, and not only.
Yeah, I understand where he's coming from. The problem is that this still comes down to his personal preferences. Not a single thing you said or he said is based on a moral mandate, in which case anyone is welcome to take it or leave it. Nobody is compelled to adhere to his or your personal preferences.
This is why Christians don't win arguments, because no one can know for sure how you got to your arguments/beliefs and what other ones you have and what really motivates you and what you do if you win the debate or culture war or gain even a modicum of power. Even if you explain it, you could keep quiet about some of them. You can explain it better than most in your case. You can say the belief system is useful and better than other options we have for society, but there's no way to know you didn't just try really hard to justify some, 'cause God said it's wrong BS that got engraved into you as a child, or from later adult trauma that needed emotional outlet or something. You know, being even a bit more clever than the average person means you can do that, logically explain something you want to be true, even to yourself, or finding the few supporting pieces of evidence for it, while maybe hiding the motives for wanting it.
In Clown World, nobody can really win arguments. When society is dredged in tribalism, rationalism doesn't work anymore. All anyone cares about right now is glory or shame. Either you say things that bring glory to your tribe, or you are shamed and you're made an outsider. And that is why people will necessarily abandon all rationality for the sake of not being called a racist or a bigot. And that's also why people will readily accept two or more mutually exclusive ideas. Most of the time, though not all of the time, the desire to be morally righteous in the eyes of one's community will override one's desire to be rationally correct. That's also why I say my opinion doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's worthless because it is clear some people do value it, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't know if what I say will actually change anything. I mean, if I came up with the most eloquent and well thought out rationale possible, ultimately I'm still competing against egos and deluded senses of morality. And even if I do change minds, I can't change hearts. Only Christ can do that.
Dread Roberts is an idiot who has been using words about the wokies, words others use as well, or even worse. The difference is that in Dread's case, and Melanie who came out and said it clearly, they really also seem to have an issue with certain non-Christian relationships because they are Christians. That's actual bigotry with basis in religion, which they are entitled to, and you might say, what's wrong with that? Like you said it about sexism, because men and women are different. When some of us call wokies bad things, it's not cause of what they do with their lives, it's cause they need to involve other people in it by frequently blackmailing themselves into games, and they are usually emotionally fragile enough to need the absurd levels of validation. When Dread does it cause his crappy god told him being gay is wrong, or at least it's more likely. I am not sure what he thinks, and he is unlikely to say it outright if he does think it, but the context points to it. I'm not sure why you do it either. Dread made the mistake of revealing some of his other beliefs. With you we can only guess for now, or watching 40% of your videos wasn't enough and it's in there somewhere, and we can only ever guess about motives for everyone.
So again, I don't know anything about Dread Roberts other than some of what I've heard concerning this drama here. From what I've seen, he stepped into AstroTurf doo-doo caca, and now he's waving around his Christian card like that necessarily means he's more correct about telling the truth than anyone else simply telling the truth. And as for Melanie Mack, this is all I have to say about her. When a man and a woman are married, the role of the husband is to be the embodiment of Christ, while the role of the wife is to be the embodiment of the church. Now, if a woman is telling you that she loves Christ, but you know she readily divorced her husband, who, again, is supposed to be the embodiment of Christ, then what exactly is that love worth?
Objective moral principles, you say, are those from God? Since I don't remember you ever saying where those come from what I watched so far. You come out and say that clearly as you want Jeff to. Cause if you think they should or do come from Sky Daddy, that's a big problem since they can come packaged with other bad things.
Well, wait a minute. Are you moralizing to me, or are you just talking about your personal preferences here? You see, the root of the problem is that everyone moralizes. Everyone has a sense of right or wrong. And your problem is with whom? Who is imposing their morals on you? And from what I can see, you're automatically geared to start having problems with it if it's Christians doing it. And that's the same deal with Jeff or Dev or a lot of these centrists. But when it's anyone who is not a Christian, then you are either unaware of it or you don't care. But it's still moralizing. Like, for example, all this anti-racist stuff that's mandated by the state or institutions or private companies. DEI, for example. That's a moral behavior imposed on us. Why is it that up until just recently we were told to care about it? But then a few people calling themselves Christians start talking about their personal preferences on X, and now you're told to care about being moralized to. And I do understand why people do this. It is a principle that dates back as far as the Enlightenment, and it borrows from the idea of what is sacred and what is profane. For many modernists, Christianity is profane. It's a holdout from the primitive world which we supposedly evolved from following the Renaissance. It's also why I can understand why people like Richard Dawkins, for example, he wants to hold to his atheistic beliefs while still living within a Christian society. But there's no argument in the world a Christian can hold to reason with that mindset. I mean, are you able to have a rational discussion with someone who says they want to go swimming, but they don't want to get wet?
And oh no, another Christian crying about the children and using children-based examples. You can see where I'm coming from with this whole semi-unhinged rant, right? Even if I might be wrong in your case or in semi-defending Jeff who might be doing some stuff you say. You're speaking of tribalism when it's impossible to not think you might be engaged in it.
Yeah, you're still relying on my personal preferences, man. And by the way, I've never denied I'm not partaking in a tribal conflict. What does us good is to be aware that this is what has happened to public discourse. I don't buy into the pretense that people are rational, as much as they might insist otherwise. And I also don't buy into the pretense that everyone is going to tell me the truth about themselves when they speak.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
Incidentally, why I talk very little about myself. There's virtue in not showing your power level. That's a valuable lesson I learned from the Kiwi Farms. It's also a mindset I believe should be prevalent on the internet. And at one point, I believe that was the prevalent mindset. Nobody is owed the amount of validation given to them on so many online platforms nowadays. You know, we make fun of the progressive types on Blue Sky for that kind of stuff, but the participation trophy mindset is as universal as the like button on every piece of media you consume nowadays. It is also the reason why the dislike button was removed on YouTube. So much of social media is about making you feel validated. It deludes you into thinking that your opinion matters. And that is clown world for you. Now everyone must have an opinion about everything. Meanwhile, everyone has different opinions. But they are still told that their opinions matter.
And it don't matter. None of this matters.